Alright, hello everybody, welcome back again. Today we're going to talk about the Reformation Grows. So we're going to look at how Martin Luther's views began to grow and spread in Germany and elsewhere, and also the opposition that's going to form to Martin Luther. So our objectives and standards are to understand how the views of Martin Luther grew and spread, and to analyze opposition to Martin Luther and the Reformation. And take a moment there to read the standards, please. And our desired result. How did the Reformation grow and spread? So some vocabulary words here. We have Lutheran. Lutheran is a religion that was founded by Martin Luther and his followers, obviously coming from his last name a little bit there. But we'll see, that obviously maybe some of you are Lutheran or know people who follow this religion, but it is a sect or a denomination of Protestants. And a Protestant is a Christian of a non-Catholic religion. So they're still Christians, but they don't follow the Catholic faith. They follow, a Protestant religion. There's many different ones, and we'll talk about some of those, and you'll learn about some of those later on as well. But Lutheran, Methodist, Episcopalian, some of the other ones, Presbyterian, some of the other ones I'm thinking off the top of my head. You may know some yourself. But again, they are Christian, they're just not Catholic. So the people respond to Luther. Many people agreed with the views of Martin Luther. Remember, many people were upset with the Catholic Church, with some of the views of the Church, and how the Church had been behaving. So they were upset with them for different reasons, including political and economic reasons. And many people, including many monarchs or leaders, are going to see Luther's protest as a way to challenge the Church. Now, the concerns of the Church. Now, the officials of the Church saw Martin Luther as someone who needed to be punished by his superiors. So they say, hey, we can't have this guy going around criticizing the Catholic Church and saying all these bad things about the Church. He needs to be punished for that. However, they also soon realized that Luther is not just some crazy guy going around, saying things that nobody's really listening to. People are really listening to him and are starting to follow him seriously. So they realize that Luther is really a serious threat to the Catholic Church. Luther was also a serious threat because he had suggested that Christians drive the Pope from the Church by force. So threats by the Pope. Obviously, the Pope doesn't want to leave power or anything like that. So in 1520, Pope Leo X, his picture is right there, threatened Martin Luther with excommunication, meaning threatening to kick him out of the Church, out of the Catholic faith, unless he did this in a decree, unless he took back his statements. Now, Luther refuses, and he threw this decree that the Pope had given into a bonfire at the University of Wittenberg, where students cheered as he did this. But Pope Leo X still decided to excommunicate Luther. So now Luther is basically a man kind of kicked out of the Catholic faith. An emperor makes demands. Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, also disapproved of Martin Luther and his teachings. He had been a devout Catholic, and Charles V controlled a large empire which included the German states where Martin Luther was. Germany is really not a country at this time. It is kind of individual little territories, and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V is in charge of that area. So obviously he doesn't want to lose any power or strength in that area. And Charles V is going to order Martin Luther to the town of Worms, Germany, to stand trial in 1521, where Luther, again, will continue to refuse to take back his words. So, banning Luther. Charles V is going to issue an imperial order known as the Edict of Worms, soon after. And Martin Luther will be declared a heretic, meaning someone who is preaching something that isn't religiously truthful or goes against religion, and also declared as an outlaw. Now, no one will be allowed to give him food or shelter, and his books are going to be burned or were to be burned. Now, support grows. Prince Frederick the Wise of Saxony, his picture right there, decided to go against the emperor. He actually sheltered Martin Luther for almost a year in one of his castles, and while he was there, Martin Luther translated the New Testament into German. Prior to this, many Bibles and religious writings had been written in Latin, and many ordinary people or common people could not read Latin, let alone write it or understand it. So Luther is going to translate the New Testament into German so people can understand it. He returned to Wittenberg in 1522 and discovered that many of his ideas were being practiced by other Germans and other people. Again, Martin Luther and his followers will then establish a new religious group known as Lutherans, and others will begin to apply the revolutionary ideas of Martin Luther to other aspects of society as well, not just religion, but in terms of economics and political views as well. Taking action. In 1524, German peasants demanded an end to serfdom. This was kind of like working the land, kind of almost like a slave, and not really getting anything in return for it. You would work it for, your noble, or and you wouldn't really get anything in return for it. So German peasants are going to demand an end to serfdom after reformers had talked of Christian freedom. And groups of angry peasants are going to pillage, burn, and raid monasteries. Monasteries are part of the Catholic faith and Catholic training for monks and other religious leaders and things like that across the countryside. Martin Luther is actually horrified by the events, and he writes a pamphlet asking for mercy by the German princes on the peasants. So he says, please don't punish these people. They're, it's not, they don't really know what they're doing, or it's not their fault really necessarily. Now the princes are going to refuse, and they're going to crush this revolt. Again, Martin Luther is really upset. People are doing this, and the princes are actually going to kill as many as 100,000 people. Okay, and many people will kind of turn against Luther a little bit here because they felt betrayed and rejected by Luther's religious leadership. Now, many northern princes in Germany did support Lutheranism. Now, some believed in his kind of religious reasons for doing so and trying to reform the Catholic Church and trying to reform things, but others used it for selfish means, for their own means. They believed that they could use Luther's teachings as an excuse to assert their independence from Charles V and to take over church property. So again, maybe not so much in religious, if they were following it for religious reasons, but for their own reasons. Now, the princes who did remain loyal to the Pope joined forces against Luther and his ideas. Those who supported Luther signed a protest to the agreement by princes who were loyal to the Pope, and they became known as Protestants. You'll see in the word there kind of protest, right? So that's kind of where we get the word Protestants, is they were protesting against this agreement or alliance of princes who were loyal to the Pope. Now, determined to keep his subjects Catholic, Charles V went to war against those Protestant princes. Charles V and his supporters did defeat the Protestant princes and their followers in 1547. However, he's unable to force them back into the Catholic Church. In 1555, tired of fighting, Charles V orders Catholic and Protestant princes to meet in the city of Augsburg, Germany, and there they decide that each prince would decide which religion would be followed for their state or their territory. So if Prince A is Catholic, he wants people in his territory to follow Catholicism. Prince B, perhaps, is a Protestant or a Lutheran, let's say, and he wants people to follow Protestant or Lutheranism. So this is known as the Peace of Augsburg, where each prince could declare what religion should be followed in the area that they controlled. And this does bring about a little bit of a fight, a little bit of an end to the fighting there. Not completely, but it does kind of help release some of the tension there as well. Alright, so our closure, how did the Reformation grow and spread? Think about, the princes in Germany, the trouble that they faced, the conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics, and that will help you answer your question. Alright, please be sure to include this in your chart. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night. Let me know of any questions or concerns, and I will hopefully talk to you all soon. Take care.